Okay, I would like to open the regular council meeting for the Village of Cumberland for whatever day this is, February 12th, 2024, and recognize that we are gathered on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation, and we are forever grateful for their care and stewardship of this land and their grace and collaboration in the governance of this land. I also just want to say that this community has suffered multiple tragedies over the last few days, and I hope we can all hold space for the families and people involved, and send them our love and compassion and care. And with that, I'll ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And adoption of the regular council minutes, January 22nd.
Move the minutes. Second.
Thank you. And we have the Comox Valley Situation Table. Thanks for coming, Dana.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome to stand or sit, whatever you're more comfortable with.
And can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you all for having me here today. I'm especially excited to be here as I am also from Cumberland. Today, I would like to provide an overview of a new initiative in our community called the Situation Table, and I am coordinating the Situation Table. My name is Dana Forsgren. My presentation today will be covering what is a situation table, what are the different roles at the situation table, how are tables structured in BC, and I'll also share some of the notable trends and the benefits that we have experienced over the past 8 months. I'll leave one consideration for council at the end as well. The Situation Table is supported by and often brought to communities by the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General. It is a part of the community of the BC's Community Safety Plan. It is not a new model. It's been in Canada for nearly 15 years, and it is in multiple provinces. In BC, there are currently 33 active situation tables, and a dozen more are being mobilized right now. On Vancouver Island, we have a situation table in Victoria, in Cowichan Bay Duncan, in Nanaimo, Campbell River, and in Port Hardy. So what is a situation table? It is not an entity. It is a meeting space to support a more collaborative process between public safety, the health authority, social services, and Indigenous support services to support individuals who are experiencing high risk, near severe harm, or crises. This is a preventative model seeking to support people before they hit crises. This next slide is a visual that can show you some of the risk factors that may be impacting one individual at one point in time. At the Comox Valley Situation Table, we are often supporting individuals with 8 or more risk factors, such as this. And this is a real example of someone we did support at the Situation Table. This is a very common example of someone trying to navigate so many different risk factors. And you can see how complex this would be for someone to independently navigate. This is near impossible to navigate independently. It would involve crossing multiple different types of services and sectors to regain some stability in their life. What the table aims to do is come together and recognize these situations are incredibly complex and eliminate as many barriers as we can to providing services to these individuals by bringing resources together and providing an offer of support that can help an individual bypass these long wait lists. It is also a way to rapidly provide support, recognizing that an individual is near crises. On the right side of this slide, you'll see the term acutely elevated risk. And this is a term we use for the situations that are being brought forward. They must meet this high threshold of risk. What situations must meet are 4 factors, and this is that situations have a significant interest at stake, that there is reasonable belief that harm will occur without intervention if nothing is done if no support is offered, that the anticipated harm is quite significant or severe, that the individual, if they experience this type of harm, would be very difficult to rebuild afterwards, and that the risks are multidisciplinary, that the issues they're experiencing are crossing over multiple different services and systems. This next slide is showing you our main partners at the Comox Valley table. These agencies are attending the situation table on a bi-weekly basis, and their mandates and services are already well aligned with the situation table. They're already providing support in the community for individuals experiencing high risk. We also have secondary partners, and this list of partners is a much longer list than our main partners. It involves agencies that can use the situation table as a resource on an as-needed basis, or as a table we may approach these other secondary partners as needed as well. If we're seeking a type of support that is not already sitting at the table, we may reach out to these other secondary partners. This also allows a wider impact in the community for other individuals across the regional district to access this table on an as-needed basis. Some examples of these secondary partners are the Senior Support Society, the CV Emergency Management Services, and Comox First Nation. The Systems Leaders Group is a group that we are currently forming. This is made up of the senior level managers and often of a city representative who will provide general oversight to the chair and to the coordinator. This is also incredibly important as we are working together with senior level managers to address the system issues and the risks that we are seeing in our community. So this meeting is really to come together and decide how we're going to start addressing the gaps in the social services that we're seeing. This next slide is showing you how situation tables are managed across the province. And you can see that many cities and municipalities have taken ownership over the situation table, but we also have RCMP partnerships, nonprofits, and the Health Authority that have taken ownership over the situation table. I bring this forward because we are currently managed with nonprofit partnership, but having another partnership such as an institution or a municipality is incredibly important for the long-term sustainability and commitment for the situation table. I'll start sharing some of our most up-to-date data from the table, and this is data that I've collected up to February. So I have presented to other councils, but this is our most up-to-date data so far. You can see on the left that our top referring agencies are CV Emergency Management Services, Bylaw, Courtney Bylaw, and RCMP. And these services are typically those services providing support in emergent situations. And the table really helps to act as a way to facilitate communication with the next steps to support these individuals at very high risk. We also see Wacheh Friendship Center is a top referring agency, but is also on the other side as an agency involved in collaborative support planning. And on the right, you'll see those agencies that are heavily involved in collaborative support planning. We have VIHA, Mental Health Substance Use, Wacheh Friendship Center, Courtney Bylaw, Dawn to Dawn Action on Homelessness, and Income Assistance. And it's important to see this because, as you've seen, these situations are very complex, that bringing these situations to the table allows for this type of interagency cross-sector type of communication, where we have a variety of different professional viewpoints and resources being brought to the table to better support those very complex situations. This chart will show you the most common risks that are presented in the situations coming forward, and we can see some of the most familiar persistent risk factors being poverty and housing and substance misuse. But we are also seeing some other risk factors come forward, such as unemployment, that families and individuals are unable to meet their basic needs, that there is a high level of crime victimization, mental health, and physical health concerns, and this may include ongoing medical health issues as well. The situation table in the Comox Valley started in June 2023, so we have been active for 8 or 9 months, and it's been an incredible moment to build relationships across sectors that are not normally communicating. What we've heard from our partners at the table is that situations are looked at from multiple viewpoints, and that these partnerships are opening up resources that the other partners would not normally know about. And what is great about that is that these resources are being communicated to those who are most at risk. We're also seeing a unique set of de-identified data being collected that can help us understand some of those preventative support services to help individuals in our community prior to crisis occurring. I'd like to leave council with one consideration. I had spoken about the systems leaders group earlier. It would be excellent to have someone from the Cumberland Council or someone from the City of Cumberland to join our systems leaders group. And this would allow us to have more effective communication with the City of Cumberland, and as well a way to discuss next steps in advocating for better social supports in our community.
Thank you so much.
And I will leave it there, and I just want to make one mention. Karen McKinnon is a part of this table, in this table process as a table chair, and has been an excellent support and facilitator throughout this time for us as well. So I'd like to make that mention. Thank you so much.
Awesome. It's really great to have both of you here. Thanks so much. Questions, council?
When do you meet?
We meet bi-weekly, and we have just been given a new space at the Ministry of Public Safety, the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. So we've been meeting at the Community Justice Center for the past 8 months, and our table is growing, and so now we are better accommodated. And we meet every 2 weeks on Tuesday from 10 to 12.
And the leaders group would meet at the same time or a different time, or is that it?
And yeah, good
Do we know what
question.
that
And
would
I
look
should
like?
have mentioned that the Systems Leaders Group is a biannual commitment. It's very low commitment. We would be
Nice.
meeting biannually. And we can also make have a discussion about what makes sense for those leaders who are involved, about whether we meet online or in person, whatever makes most sense. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else?
Just a comment. Thanks for the presentation. I love everything about this. I think this is a great approach to trying to help people, just being more collaborative and getting everybody involved. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, great work. Just taking down those silos and building relationships between service providers will make such a huge difference alone, never mind the work you're actually doing at the table. I think all of it is very, very good and hopeful. Thank you.
It seems like the work that this is doing is connecting the dots that just aren't connected. You can drive through town and you can just feel like that's what's happening, is that all these things aren't connected. So,
Yeah,
thanks
absolutely.
for that.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
So there's a motion to receive that delegation.
Move receipt?
Second.
Thank you, and all in favor? Excellent. Thanks for coming. And correspondence from Nanaimo Regional Hospital District. There is a request. I'm going to find the letter. So the letter came a while ago, and we had asked for a delegation, but I guess the delegation was not able to happen. So, but they have asked us for support, so, for their list of 5 capital projects. And if nobody has any questions, there's a recommendation there.
I move that council receive the correspondence from the Nanaimo Regional Hospital District Chair Ian Thorpe regarding ongoing advocacy work to advance priority health projects in the region.
Yeah, second.
Thanks. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Okay,
So are we putting off a decision on,
are we sending a letter? I
Is-
think we should
is-
send a,
Yes, so council should make that motion if you'd like to send the letter of support.
yeah, I would be in favor of supporting all of this, having these kinds of services
Closer.
closer than Victoria or Vancouver would, I think, be a benefit to the valley. So,
seconder? Thank you. All in favor? Thank
and
you.
you can craft a motion from that for us, Rachel?
I believe there is a suggestion in the package on, what page should I see that on? At the last page, page 50 of your agenda. That is council's intention.
Yes, yeah, if we can,
Thank you.
thank you.
Awesome. Okay, reports, UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund application. Hello, Annie.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here on behalf of Ryan Parton, Acting Manager of Parks and Recreation, to present a request from CVRD for Council to support their application for the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant application. Such funding would be used to increase regional emergency support service capacity. CVRD is looking to apply on behalf of the 5 regional partners for a total of $150,000. The Community Emergency Preparedness Funding is intended to help better prepare for disasters and reduce risk from natural hazards in a changing climate. CVRD intend to use the funding primarily towards the purchase of mobile AOC kits and group lodging supplies and some emergency management training. If successful, the funding will be received and administered by CVRD for the region, and some funding may be used towards training opportunities for village staff. So tonight, staff recommend that Council support CVRD application to UBCM Community Preparedness Fund in the amount of up to $150,000, and that CVRD receives and administers any funding received from said grants on behalf of the Village of Cumberland.
Thank you. Questions?
No.
No, move it.
I'll move the council support the Comox Valley Regional District's application to the Union of BC Municipalities Community Preparedness Fund in the amount of $150,000 to further build regional capacity to prepare for and respond to disasters, reduce risks from natural hazards in a changing climate, assist with modernization of emergency support services, and to build capacity to ensure that group lodging and reception centers are delivered in a trauma-aware and culturally safe environment, and that the Comox Valley Regional District receives and administers any funding received from said grants in 2024-2025 on behalf of the Village of Cumberland.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And just many thanks to the CVRD crew that put that together. Next, we have wastewater federal enforcement warning letter. Come on up, Rob.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I've got 3 reports here. They all have a wastewater flavor to them, and so we thought we'd start with the federal enforcement.
Tasty.
Not flavor, not flavor.
We
Smell?
smell, yes, aroma. We had a notification from federal enforcement officer back in December that they were coming to pay us a visit. And you'll see from the warning letter, this was a result or prompted by a notice from the physical science officer at Environment Canada Climate Change, and it was specifically in relation to fish lethality tests. So we are required to do fish lethality tests under a provincial permit, so it's not a federal requirement, but we have to report it federally. So we report the results on an annual basis, usually February. I've just submitted the 2023 results. So we report on quantity, volume of effluent deposited. We report on carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand, we call it CBOD, TSS, and number of days that we release effluent. So based on our effluent volume, we only have to do annual reporting, but they watch closely the fish lethality because it falls under it could have potential implications under the Fisheries Act. And so that was, following our site visit with him in the morning, and answering questions and touring them around the site, we left them there to do their own sampling. They have their own special facility where they actually test the effluent quality. And then myself, Michelle, and Gavin met with the enforcement officers. There was one in training, so it was a bit more intimidating. But and basically he went through sections of the act and kind of emphasized the fact that they have concerns with the fish lethality, but recognize the village has started construction with the treatment upgrades. And so they're very happy to see that. They're very well aware of the provincial consent order. They've read all the documentations. And so basically, the maximum fine, they made it, they noted it in the letter, and you've probably read it. It's $1 million a day, right? So they can fine us up to $1 million a day for being out of compliance or for releasing substances that are harmful to the environment under the Fisheries Act. At this point, he's willing to work with us, nice fellow, and issued the warning letter. And of course, in the warning letter, it notes that it's not a finding of guilt or civil liability, and it's not an administrative adjudication. So that's good. However, they've got it on record, and they will use it if there's subsequent action to be taken. It'll be a reference document that they can provide to a judge, or hopefully, never needs to be used. And they also emphasize at the end of the letter that, they will consider taking further action if we do not take all the necessary corrective steps to comply, or if we do not exercise due diligence in the future. So that's kind of the summary. Just to give council an update, we did the enforcement officer, we did submit sorry, I'm mumbling here a bit, but we did submit the fish lethality test from 2024. So we submitted it to the province. We're reminded that it needs to be submitted through a 24-hour response if we have fish lethality, as well as we copy the enforcement officer. He wants to be kept in the loop. And then we've submitted a project update, kind of where we came from to where we are currently, and then what the projected timelines look like moving forward. And then he's asked for quarterly updates. So the first quarterly update is in April this year. We need to submit something to him saying, hey, here's where we're at, kind of thing. So that's kind of at bay, I guess you could say. And basically this is an update for council, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Rob. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Turin.
Just,
Go ahead.
okay, thank you. I'm just noticing there's 4 instances where we failed the test.
Mm-hmm.
Out of how many tests, I didn't catch, how many tests per year do we do?
We only do one fish lethality test a year.
And so we failed it 4 out of 5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
This all kind of leads into the next report.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll move that council receive the wastewater federal enforcement warning letter report for information.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And on to the next.
All right. Well, as council's aware, we have a recreational vehicle sandy receiving station, whatever you want to call it, beside Village Park. It was relocated there in an attempt to address some traffic snarls on Bevan Road. The landfill traffic was being snarled in the summer from people queuing on the road and not allowing traffic to pass, and other things to do with the facility or the business owner at the time. So it was relocated here in support, of kind of the lake park users, local residents, and the use has since grown. And so there's real concerns about the impacts, and you can see from the attached graph, we've seen a spike in BOD and TSS, and it's concerning. And, you know, a bit more research will tell you that, I've never owned an RV, but, you know, the septic holding tanks, a lot of people use treatment chemicals to either suppress the smell
Really nasty.
or to slow the aging of the septic waste so it doesn't smell. And so in some circumstances, you know, formaldehyde is used, and it's very, very harmful in the biological process that we see in the treatment system. And so I'm quite concerned. I'm not saying this is the smoking gun while we've seen these spikes, but I definitely think it's not helping. And again, going back to the previous report and the federal warning letter, you know, we need to be doing our due diligence, and I really think this lends to due diligence in closing this facility until we have, you know, treatment upgrades at our facility, until there's maybe better access to RV sanity dump stations elsewhere in the valley. I just think we're taking the brunt of people looking for a public place to dump. So now the other concern is, you know, we have no control over other substances that could be dumped down there that could be harmful to the treatment system as well. So, and then lastly, you know, those are septic loads, so they have high BOD amounts because they haven't been watered down. You know, like they're typically if you go to like Lake Park, they have a shower facility, right? So you go shower, and that goes into the septic system there. It doesn't go into your holding tank. So all you got going into your holding tank is human waste, and so it's very concentrated. So it's all that sluggish stuff that's going to our lagoon system isn't the best. It's not watered down like you see when you flush a normal toilet, you know, throughout the community. So anyways, my recommendation to council is to seek closure of that facility, and then secondly, to see if you're interested in submitting a letter to the CVRD board and request that they address the need for recreational vehicle sanity dump station facility in the Comox Valley, really to address the broader area. You know, with a note that they have limitations on the services that they can establish. So, you know, what they can do to leverage those facilities, I guess time will tell, but I just think it's a broader problem than for Cumberland to kind of address, so.
Thank you, agreed. Perhaps 4VI would like to fund a sandy dump station somewhere publicly.
Great idea.
I just have a question about the graph. So you can see the spike starting in 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020, and then it goes up again in 2021. So recognizing that we accidentally became a tourist destination during the pandemic, an even bigger tourist destination. Not that we weren't before, but you think that's what it was, or was there another sandy dump prior to those, like that closed in 2020 or 2021, to our knowledge?
My understanding that there was one. It was a public one down at one of the service stations down in Courtney. I
the
can't remember the
Mohawk.
exact location, but it closed. And
Okay.
I think that was the last one between Bowser and Black Creek or Willow Point or whatever. Like there's nothing in between. So,
And there's no private facilities around, or
well, I think there
you
are
aware of?
private facilities, but they're usually for the users of the particular park, right? They're
Gotcha.
restricted to the public.
It's not a professional service around where you buy your RV, take something back in return.
So then, if we,
Well, and the other issue is there are people who don't live in a home anymore. They're, you know,
Yeah,
they're in a
exactly.
trailer or a motor home or a camper, and they either have to use this facility, or there's people that have a service provider come and collect the waste and then dump it here. So that's all happening right now.
yeah, that was sort of my question. This is like you said, isn't this it for the valley, and what
Whole North Island, really.
what happens then? Yeah.
Well, so for example, my father-in-law comes to visit in his motorhome, and he usually, I think one year he came up and he used the sandy dump here. He usually is on a destination somewhere else, and he'll just dump dump on the way, right? So there's lots of stations if you don't live in Cumberland or the Valley, that you can hit on your travels.
South of
so.
here, yeah.
Yeah, south or north.
Yeah.
What do you think the impact might be of illegal dumping as a result of the closure? I mean, it's a hard one to forecast, but do you think that's somewhat of a risk?
It really is. I mean, that's kind of like up there with, illegal garbage dumping, right?
Yeah.
Because tipping fees and stuff. I don't know. I don't know what the impact is going to be on the immediate valley and if people are going to go out of Forest Road or somewhere and dump, but yeah, there are other facilities, right? So, I mean, it might be an inconvenience for people if they're leaving, heading somewhere else, because not everybody's that comes to recreate at Lake Park is from the valley or from Cumberland, right? People do come from out of town, so I just don't have an answer for you on that one.
I guess we'll find out.
Go ahead, Michelle.
And also, I think the CVRD is looking at the private sector as well. Like they're looking at opportunities as well, and often, that's what will happen is there'll be a need, and the private sector will probably jump in and.
Hopefully. Any other questions?
No,
I think it's really important that we make sure that we are off any public or advertised sites. So RVers, so that people aren't driving in and then seeing it dump and then they go down to the BMX or whatever and do whatever they need to do because they need to get rid of their stuff. So I did check. I just found one site that has us on it, but yeah, there's maybe more.
Yeah, no, good point. The other thing I should note is there were funding partners that sponsored both the
Yes.
recreational vehicle sandy dump and the bike wash station. I've spoken with the signature on that agreement, and you figure there's just a way we can work something out. It might be extending
The
time
bike
frame
wash.
on that one or return of some funding. We're just not sure yet, but yeah, we'll be able to resolve it at a staff level.
Awesome. That's what I was hoping. They just extend the bike wash.
To be fair, there's a lot of traffic issues already now
Yeah.
with that, so.
Yeah, and it really doesn't make sense for us to be doing that. Okay, so there's a recommendation there. Two recommendations.
I'll move that council approve the closure of the recreational vehicle Sandy Dump Station located adjacent to Village Park on Royston Road, and that council submit a letter to the CVRD board and request they address the need for recreational vehicle Sandy Dump Station facility in the Comox Valley.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
And wastewater project update.
All right.
Everybody take a deep
Best
breath.
for the last, eh? So there's been a bit of collaboration on this report, and really the purpose is to provide an update on the progress of the project and the need for the budget increase and provide council with funding recommendations for the proposed budget increase, including consideration of additional borrowing. And so what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to pass it over to Paul Nash, so he's going to give a bit of a project update and summary, and then Annie's going to chime in after Paul just to provide some options and discussion around what those funding options look like. So
Thank you.
over to you, Paul.
Thank you. All right, I will share my screen here, and which is just going to be your agenda package, but just to keep it consistent, that's what I can work to. Okay, are you seeing my project memo?
Yep.
Perfect. Well, yes, I wish that the purpose of this was stopped there. But regrettably, this part is the main thing that's going on. So I won't go through the history of it here, which you all know. The major point is down here. The restructure, the extra scope items, they've added cost, but just the change factor from adding these things in, and some of our forced changes have continued to multiply the cost increases. It's unfortunate, and we've done all we can, but it is a case that the change itself has led to significant cost increases. So I'll just go through where we're at on the project itself. We did finally start work. Civil works in September. This part here, the installation of lagoon piping, it was the first and most important thing that we had to do while it was still summer dry weather and we could lower the lagoons, which we did, and saw a few interesting things when the lagoon levels were lowered. So that was good. But we had to get these pipes in while the lagoon level was low. They then went and did a whole lot of bulk excavation, which those guys love doing. Backfill and compact the area. So it's you dig it out and then put in good stuff and bring it back up to where it was. Foundations and pipe work, it's what they call, that those will be dug in at a later date, what they call scratching it in, digging trenches for pipes and things like that. It's just better to do it like that than try and get them all laid out at once at the start. So we've done a bunch of work, and but obviously we've really only just started. The photos here, I don't know if any of you had a chance to go down to the site recently. The last time I was actually there, everything was very white, and fortunately Rob took some photos a few weeks later, and we're looking at this. So right in the foreground here is the new lagoon outtakes. This is where water will leave to then go into all of our wonderful post-treatment that's going to be built in that area over there. So that was one of the things where lowering the lagoon level allowed this through berm penetration to happen much easier than if the lagoons were full and would have to use a copper dam. Walking further down that berm, looking back at that area, this huge pile of earth here is right where the reed bed is going to go. We're not sure if we will need all of this. The idea is this material will be spread out underneath the reed bed when we then put down the liner and then the biochar media on top. So the level there right now, you can see the water. That's the high water level in the creek at the time. So this area will be filled up by about 1 meter. The photo's a bit deceptive, but there is actually a 2.5 meter level change from the top of the berm down to where that water is. And we'll fill that in there for the reed bed. More pipe work that was done. So this is the new connection between the two lagoons, from the large lagoon on the left to the small lagoon on the right. And when we're ready to turn on the new system, we'll remove that plate and open it up. So right now, all these things are sitting there ready for the big day, which regrettably is a year and a half away. The northwest corner here, this used to be just an absolute bog in winter to drive around. So they've resurfaced that. And what you can't quite see here is a whole lot of material has been placed over the edge of that berm, the excess that was excavated from the other end. So we've basically done the seismic reinforcement of that entire north berm already. So some good progress there. And lots of equipment on site. The red thing right there is the electrical room, or the E-house as we call it. Over in the far right, these two little blue things here are the sludge dewatering bins. There's a couple of crates there with blowers in them. So all sorts of stuff has been arriving, which is great. The hard part is getting it to be put together. And then work ongoing for these two, the operator's amenity building and the workshop. So these are the prefab buildings being done next door by Mutchalat. And we claim an unofficial world record for the shortest distance for off-site pre-manufactured buildings from where they're built to where they'll be placed. So that part is proceeding.
Paul,
The rest of the work, sorry, Rob?
Just correction there. Just the one building, the lab office is the prefab. The other one's stick built on site.
By Mutchalat?
Yep, correct.
Yes. Okay. All right. So only one world record then, but still. So those ones are proceeding, but the rest of it we're at a standstill because of the design issues, and so we had to pause our work in November, and because once we start putting pipes and things in the ground, we're committed, and not yet. Everything is not yet finalised. So basically, we had to stop. Just quickly here on phase 2. So remember phase 2, all the good parts: reed bed and tertiary filtration. So reed bed is designed, the tertiary filtration has been bought, and so that's half of phase 2. And then the stormwater, wetland and creek channel relocation, all of that will have to happen. Some of it will happen later this summer, and then in 2025. We can't infill the old channel till we build the new one. So those two pieces, most of that work will happen a year and a half from now. So yeah, the good parts come last. And just on the schedule, so yeah, we started out with great ambition back here in March of 2021. And basically every year we've been delayed a year as these different design issues have played out. We had to redesign it as a result of the weather conditions in 2021. And we've just had the multiplying effect of the cumulative changes. We've had our challenges with the design company. So it's pushed out. The green for construction, this is our pause right there. We started, we stopped. And once we get going, you can see the time frame to actually build it is pretty much the same as what it was all along. We just need to get everything resolved so that we know exactly where everything is going. The integration of these components has been far more challenging than anybody ever expected. Which leads us into the budget problem. When things are more challenging, it costs more. So if you're familiar with my previous reports from this structure that Colliers uses, the budget amount, the committed cost, what we've actually committed to. Doesn't mean we've spent all the money, but we have said we're going to. We've issued purchase orders or contracts, etc. And the forecast cost, of course, the best estimate as to where we will be at the end of it. And our last budget, which represented the forecast cost at the time, plus a $250,000 contingency, $14.5 million. And today, with what Colliers, the project manager, is recommending that we have for contingency, our forecast budget is up to $16.7 million. So it's increased further. A lot of this increase here is in the design component. We've had minor increases in everything else, the construction management, minor in the equipment, and then the construction services, and that includes concrete and stuff like that, has also gone up a bit from where it was. So it's unfortunate, of course, and we're doing our best to manage them, but it's finally sort of come home that we have to spend some serious effort to resolve these design issues, hence the major increase that we're looking at here. And just the progression as to how it went from when we started, and I've just adjusted that original budget to 7.7 million from the original 9.7 to take out the phase 2 part, reed bed and wetland, right? So we adjust it back, and then a year and a half later, September of 2022, we're at 12.4. That was our first authorized increase. June last year, 14.5, and here we are today looking at 16.7. So it has doubled in these 2.5 years, and that's very painful. Just a 2 million increase from where we were last year. Once again, most of it is a recognition we've got some serious work to do on the design, and these subsequent increases we're expecting in construction, and a request for more contingency, which from staff's report you'll see that even though we wanted extra, we're not necessarily getting it. But anyway, that's where it is. Yep, I just said that line. Okay. The part that I like to try, the cost cutting or value engineering, we're always looking for things, but it gets to a point where once the design is set and things literally start getting set in the ground, there becomes very little that we can do. And even where you can identify something that will save money, the cost of making that change might exceed it. So basically, once we're into construction, we don't want to change anything unless we have no other choice. And there's very little scope for further cost savings. We've got a few that we can make as we go, but there's not much more to come. In my report of June last year, this section here about the causes, I wrote this up. I've updated it for now, and particularly about the inflation, to use the Building Construction Price Index instead of general inflation, a better measure, which I thank Hans at Colliers for putting me onto. And here's what it is. Official inflation, 21% over these years from 2017 to 23, and I don't think anybody believes that is actually accurate. If you can find a single thing that hasn't gone up by more than that, I'd be amazed. Relevant to this project, the non-residential construction index, about a 40% increase. And thankfully, we're not building residential, because look at that. It's crazy. But 40% increase is reasonably reflective of what's being seen on same scope projects where you've got cost increases from a few years ago. In our case, we've got 40% there on the original 7.7. The forced scope changes. This hasn't changed from what I presented in June of last year, but I put it here because it's still part of the overall increase. We did have these redesigns for aeration and pumped flow. It's a major change in the cost, and the impact just of that change is felt further down. We had our voluntary changes that we made, which have increased either performance, capacity, or convenience with things like paving the tent structure. And the change in disinfection, it's a great thing, but the complexity of that change itself has actually greatly exceeded just the change in the equipment cost. And they manifest themselves as delays. And so here's our updated section on the cost of the delays. Various things, the hydraulic redesign, the berms, that's been an ongoing challenge about how we will do the anchor systems in the berm. So the delay part of that, and then the design ones here, and shutting the site down for our potentially a 6-month delay here. So while we sort all this stuff out, yeah, it's regrettable, but there's no way to avoid it. We wanted to get going for the sake of getting going, and now the unresolved design issues are basically forcing us to stop, so they have a delay implication. Putting it all together, that was where we started out, 7.7, inflationary increase 3, right? Scope additions almost 3, the forced ones, the voluntary 1.5, and effectively $1 million in delay. And we're asking for an additional 0.6 to replenish the contingency, though in the staff report you'll see that part hasn't been approved. So the total budget increase is not quite this number, it's a bit less, but I'll let Annie speak to that in a moment. So anyway, there we are. We have doubled in this time. We have been forced to add scope, and we've improved performance and capacity and so on. But nonetheless, nobody expected nor wanted a doubling of the budget when we started out. One piece of bright news, phase 2 remains actually on track. For the reed bed, we've done our value engineering to make it smaller and better. So we expect to stay within the budget of that. Tertiary filtration, the equipment has been bought, so the cost for that is known. The installation cost is minimal, so that part is very good, which is great. And then for the channel relocation and the channel infill, that channel infill is actually pretty straightforward. And for the channel relocation in the stormwater wetland, I've always said it's the area where we have some discretion as to how fancy we go. And so basically for that one, we will work to that budget. And if we have to be less ambitious in the habitat enhancements and things like that, and how much we make the channel a wonderful meandering channel, then we'll have to do that. So phase 2 at the moment, all the good stuff is actually still on track for its budget. And then last part for me here, the grant funding status. So we've got all the major grants that we can get. There might be one opportunity for $100,000 to be pursued towards the end of this year, which if we can, we will. But for our grant funding programs, they're all in place, they're all there, and where we end up is this much to come from Cumberland's reserves. We had 4.4 of borrowing up the top, the rest is grants, and from where we started out 3 years ago, we're expecting to use hardly any of Cumberland reserves, and here we are today at 5.76 from various funding sources that Annie will speak to. We've had to extend the time frame for these grants to 2026. GMF, their financial year is different, so we go to September of 2025, and that's been approved, and so we are in good shape there. Rob spoke to this one, so we will be informing the grant funding programs that we're under the gun on that one too. And one other, I'll just slip in a comment here relating to the Sandy dump. Since we think that's part of the reason why we're out of compliance. Just a couple of quick comments. Normally on larger treatment systems, the Sandy dump is it's literally a drop in the bucket. So if the Sandy dump was attached to the CVRD system at Brent Road or somewhere on their collection system, it's an order of magnitude larger than what Cumberland's system is. So just by means of dilution, it's not as big of a problem. So adding it, if it's as large a load as what we think onto this small system, it makes a big difference. Second thing, one of the reasons for doing the biochar media reed bed and the plants and the biochar is to take out certain toxins that aren't normally removed by the standard treatment processes. So once our new system is up and running, we might find that it would deal with this. But as Rob said, we don't want to keep it going for now. We'd rather wait till it's up and running and then we can try it again and see. But that was one of the reasons for doing the enhanced treatment is it's another step to polish the water and remove some of these toxins that are not normally removed. We're not sure if those are the ones causing the problem, but that's why the reed bed is there, is to add that extra layer of treatment. So with that, just return it back to the main message here. Cost increases of basically $1.5 million from June of last year till now, and with our request for extra money for contingency, budget increase from 14.54 to 16.67 is what we are recommending. And with that, I will, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm not sure if you want to take questions now or wait till Annie has spoken to her part.
Does anybody have questions for Paul specifically?
I've just got one or two. With the increase in the capacity, how big of a population can this serve now?
That's a great question. The original design population, where was that capacity? Here we go. Right. The original design population was for 8,000 people and a dry weather flow of 1,800 cubic meters a day. Just because we've increased the tertiary capacity to 7,200 doesn't mean it can handle 4 times that many people, because that's in a wet weather condition. But effectively, we would be able to now authorize it for a dry weather flow of 2,400 cubic meters a day, and that would translate to a population of about 12,000 people. So originally it was forecast for a doubling of Cumberland's population, and the way we've done it now, we will be equipped for a trebling of Cumberland's population.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all for now for me, I think.
That's all for
Yep,
Paul?
thank you.
Okay. back to Rob or Annie? Are we going to
Annie, I guess.
find the money?
So thank you, Paul, first. And now I'll provide a summary of the financial implication resulting from tonight project update, suggesting that an additional budget increase of 2.13 million is required to complete the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. While this funding could be funded from the village internal reserves, staff proposed to consider additional borrowing, which would be subject to electoral approval. This would prevent the village from depleting its reserve available for future initiatives, including the Cumberland Dam number 2. However, due to the pressure to complete the design and resume construction work in the spring, combined with the length and uncertainty of an electoral approval process, staff recommend proceeding with a combination of temporary funding from reserves. A budget increase of 1.52 million funded from internal reserves can be considered at this time, allowing to maintain a $250,000 contingency, which is a little lower than the 600,000 recommended previously. The proposed internal funding from reserve could also alternatively be used in the event electoral approval for additional borrowing wasn't successful. This would leave very little reserve funding available for future project challenges or new projects, including road replacement projects. A property tax or utility rate increase would have to be considered to fund these projects. So tonight, staff recommend a combination of temporary funding to support the budget increase with 791,700 from Community Works Fund, 406,000 from the Sewer and Water Infrastructure Asset Replacement Reserve, just over 187,000 from the Sewer Stabilization Reserve, and 135,000 from the Host Amenity Reserve. So from the proposed funding from the Community Works Fund, it includes 80,000, which is the balance available at the end of 2024. There's just over 151,000 that was previously earmarked in 2024 for the Sewer and Storm Master Plan update, which could be now funded from the Linear Asset Replacement Infrastructure Reserve, and 560,000 that was earmarked in 2023 for the Bevan Road paving project, which could also be funded from the Linear Asset Reserve. The proposed funding from the Sewer and Water Infrastructure Asset Replacement Reserve and Sewer Stabilization Reserve comes from unallocated funds accumulated in previous years. The funding from the Host Amenity Fund Reserve is currently allocated to the General Municipal Facility Asset Renewal Reserve in the approved financial plan. However, since those funds are not committed in the 5-year plan, staff proposes to reallocate them towards the budget increase. Staff also recommends considering borrowing an additional 2.5 million through the Municipal Financial Authority of British Columbia. Long-term borrowing in the amount of 4.4 million is already approved for the project, and Council had agreed to have the related debt payments paid through a special parcel tax estimated at an amount of $199 per parcel per year for 20 years, starting in 2026 when the project is completed. Borrowing an additional 2.5 million would add $113 to the parcel tax for an estimated $312 per parcel. Additional long-term borrowing would require electoral approval, which can be obtained via assent voting or alternative approval process. The assent voting or referendum allows electors to vote on whether a proposal would move forward or not. Assent voting, assent of the electors is obtained if a majority of the votes counted are in favor of the bylaw or question and conducted in the same manner as local elections. Alternative approval process, OAP, is a form of approval that allows electors to indicate whether they are against a local government proposal. If the valid elector response forms submitted meet or exceed the 10% threshold, electoral approval is deemed to have failed. From an administrative point of view, the AP is much simpler and faster, and SN voting is costly and requires more administrative support, similar to the local election of municipal council held every 4 years. If an AP fails, a council may seek electoral approval through SN voting. Staff recommend proceeding with an AP, given the wastewater treatment improvements have been mandated by the province for environmental reasons, and the cost impact of future delays to resume the project design and construction, as well as the limited option of funding. Based on the timeline of the last couple AAP held by the village, a reasonable timeline could start at the end of February and end in June. And even with a successful AAP, council can change its mind and decide for whatever reason not to proceed with the borrowing or borrow a smaller amount. There's also staff also want to inform council and the public about the projected increase in operating costs of the new wastewater treatment plant. The estimation of future operational cost of $366,000 per year previously communicated to council was based on the 2016 and 2018 project scope. Now that most of the upgrade project is designed, operation cost estimation have been revised based on the actual design and current prices for electricity and chemicals, and revised projection of future operational costs is now just over $600,000 per year, which represent an increase of $235,000 per year compared to figures originally presented. A general increase in the new wastewater treatment plant operating costs has already been anticipated by staff and incorporated in the 2024-2028 financial plan and projected sewer rates. Operation expenses were bumped to $500,000 in 2026 with a subsequent 5% annual increase. Some of the sewer stabilization reserve funding is earmarked to stabilize the sewer rate over the next 7 years, and the 2023 budget also includes some budgeted operating costs for the new plant that were not required, and at year-end the funding will become available to smooth the tax rate in the coming years. So tonight, staff recommend that council approve the additional expenditure of $1.52 million to increase the budget for the wastewater project upgrade phase 1. That council directs staff to bring forward the related budget amendment to the adopted 2023-2027 and 2024-2028 financial plan bylaws, and that council directs staff to prepare a loan authorization bylaw for the borrowing of an amount of $2.5 million for the proposed budget increase to the wastewater upgrade project. Any question?
Questions, council?
Comment, if I will, because I know a lot of people wonder how these spiral as much as they do, but it's not really out of line with what we've seen a lot of the large capital costs in other communities, and judging the potential ramifications, at least financially for the village, at $1 million a day fines, there really doesn't seem to be any option other than going forward on this. So when residents are presented with this question, I hope they realize that we're in this far. We just have a forward retreat as our main option. So, and thank you to staff for coming up with so many, like the funding for this and the options as well. So,
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions. It was actually in Paul's report. I was just looking at the grant funding there. The $2 million we put in from the Growing Communities Fund doesn't appear on that table. Is that part of the cash contribution from Cumberland Reserves?
Yes, it is showing in the, I don't have the report right here, but it's in the village contribution.
Okay, so
Sure,
that,
yeah.
okay, so there was another $2 million in grant funding there. Okay, just so the people at home know, what is the cost of an assent voting procedure? Do we have an estimate for that?
Based on the latest election, I think it was 23,000 in
Okay.
2022, I believe. Yes.
And the alternate approval process would
I
cost?
I think it would be minimal.
Okay.
It's just a matter of printing some
Yeah.
forms and the communication piece related to the process. Yeah.
Okay. And if we do get the assent, if we do get approval for the borrowing, the plan is to take that borrowed money and replenish all of the reserves that we're dipping into now, and
Yeah, we could proceed with just revert the budget amendment that will likely be approved tonight, and then just have the funding coming from additional borrowing.
okay, so
instead.
we can put our $700,000 back into our
Yeah.
linear renewal fund and et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question before I go?
Just thanks to staff for the continuous shell game that this project is. Nice to see you again, Paul.
So yeah, just another question about grants. I'm sure you've looked into this, but the channel relocation and habitat enhancement, might that be funded through a grant, ecological restoration or something like that? Maybe.
I can speak to that.
Thank you.
There is it's a federally run program called the Habitat Conservation Trust Fund. And I looked at this last year. We basically could get a grant of up to $100,000 for the habitat enhancement part. And we won't be ready to apply for that till the end of the year, which is when the application period is, once we've got it designed and costed accurately and so on. So that's what I alluded to earlier. There's chance for maybe another 100,000, but that's the only other opportunity I'm aware of.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I have a question, I guess, for you, Annie. So the repay for this debt is a parcel tax. And is that because that's the only way we're allowed to recoup costs for capital infrastructure investment? Because it doesn't really account for like the difference between a multi-unit and a single family and the amount of sewer system that they're using.
Actually, I mean, it's been just considered that way because that's what's been approved
So far.
previously by the previous council for the 4.4 million borrowing, but staff would consider different options.
Yeah, it might be more equitable to spread that out in a different way. Yeah.
And actually, on that note, it's also in the budget for this year to conduct a utility rate review.
Nice.
And we want to be looking at the sewer rates, maybe looking at a way to allocate or charge for sewer differently. So perhaps that could be considered when we get to that point of distributing that payment
Okay.
to the resident.
Thank you. Any other questions for anybody?
And then just also the DCCs is an option at some
Right.
point.
Yes.
So we just don't have that option at the moment.
Right.
But with this growth up to 12,000 people, we may be able to look at that when we're doing the DCC.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, there's a big long recommendation there.
Sure, I'll take a crack at it. I'll move that council receive the presentation from Paul Nash with an update to the wastewater project. That council approve the additional expenditure of $1.52 million to increase the budget for the wastewater upgrade project phase 1 from $14.55 million to $16.07 million, with just shy of $800,000 to be funded through the Community Works Funds, $406,000 to be funded through the Sewer and Water Infrastructure Asset Replacement Reserve, $187,300 to be funded through the Sewer Stabilization Reserve, and $135,000 to be funded through host amenity funds. The council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2024-2028 financial plan bylaw to reflect this expenditure. The council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2023-2027 financial plan bylaw to reflect a change in funding for the Bevan Road project, with $560,000 coming from the linear asset renewal reserve. The council directs staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2024-2028 financial plan bylaw to update the funding for the sewer and storm master plan, with $151,500 coming from the linear asset renewal reserve, remove the $135,000 contribution from the host amenity funds towards the general municipal facility asset renewal reserve, and that council direct staff to prepare a loan authorization bylaw for the borrowing of an amount of $2.5 million for the proposed budget increase to the wastewater upgrade project phase 1 through the Municipal Financial Authority of British Columbia with a term of 20 years.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you, and thanks for your hard work on this, everybody.
Thank you.
Onward. Okay, Information Technology Support Services contract.
So now, on a lighter note,
Seriously.
so this report is to present council with the proposed contract between the Village of Cumberland and service provider Alpha IT for the provision of IT support services, and seek council authorization to execute the contract. The village has been outsourcing its IT support services for 2 decades. CVRD was originally providing the service, and Alpha IT has been providing the service since February 2021. Last fall, the village proceeded with a competitive procurement process in anticipation of Alpha contract ending on January 31st, 2024. 5 proposals were received in response to the RFP, and after a careful evaluation, Alpha's proposal has been identified as the successful proponent. Village staff has been satisfied with the service provided by Alpha over the last 3 years, and Alpha has made valuable recommendations to improve the village IT infrastructure and security. The village now proposes to enter into a 3-year contract with Alpha, with an option to renew for an additional 2 years, and the cumulative contract value is estimated at just over $220,000. Per council purchasing management services policy, council is required to authorize any commitment over $200,000. So tonight, staff recommend that council authorize the chief administrative officer to execute the contract with Alpha IT for the provision of IT support services for the period starting February 1st, 2024 and ending January 31st, 2027. Any question?
I really appreciated the support with my laptops over the last little while, so I'll say that. Sean, not so much.
I'm going to
but
refrain from comment.
Different problem there, I'm not
The
sure.
contract looks fine to me.
Yeah, the contract looks great.
Computers don't look fine to me.
Sorry.
Just a housekeeping note or a workflow note. This is the contract has already started.
Yes, actually.
Were the proposals late in coming, or did the RFP go out late, or?
No, actually, we were in. Timing was pretty good, but there was a bit of back and forth with the contract, agree on the contract terms.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we are.
All right. Yeah, I just, when we get down to alternatives, I okay, yep, all looks good though, thank you.
Okay, there's a recommendation there.
I'll recommend that council authorize the chief administrative officer to execute the contract with Alpha IT for the provision of information technology support services for the period starting February 1st, 2024 and ending January 31st, 2027.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. That's me. The roundtable. So I think I've spoken to most of you about this. I really appreciated the work that the Economic Development Committee did over the years that it was doing the strategy and all that good stuff. It's a very a collection of very intelligent humans who are passionate about this village, and so I've been trying to figure out how to use them, and also trying to figure out how to create an opportunity to gather information when we have questions. And so this is what we've come up with. We didn't want to do another committee because we don't want to create more work for staff. We wanted something that all council could participate in, and that was open to the public, but also targeted at people with specific skills or backgrounds or whatever as needed, depending on the conversation. And so with the help of staff, we've come up with this model. I don't know, like we would just see how it goes, I think, see how useful it is. I can't imagine it being more than a quarterly. I think the report says quarterly, could be, more than quarterly for a short time and then nothing for a period of time, depending on what conversations are out there. The prompting was really around tourism for me. I think our community is experiencing impacts of tourism, but we haven't really had an opportunity to have a conversation as a community about it. And so I thought we could gather some people who have knowledge about that industry and also the impacts on the community and start that conversation there. So that would be the first topic, and then any of us could bring forward other topics and then collectively recruit people for that conversation as needed. So the report's there if anybody has questions about it or concerns or anything. Yes.
I guess my only concern would be if 3 of the council show up
At the
the
same time.
at the same time. Is one of us going to have to excuse themselves, or how are we going to make sure that we're not, what is that called, convening an illegal meeting, or?
Right. Rachel will respond to that.
Yeah, it's a,
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why we suggested it similar to a village hall.
okay.
There'd be public notice, it's a public meeting, there's transparency, but as Mayor Brown says, the point is to have an informal discussion. So there would be a record of discussion. It's not intended for any progress of village business.
Okay.
That would
Or
take
decisions.
place at a regular committee of the whole, committee of the whole, there's usually more discussion based as well, but it wouldn't act as a council meeting where village business would be moving forward.
Okay, so any ideas from that would have to then come forward to a more formal council meeting if we wanted to move forward with any of the ideas that came up.
I think Michelle might like to speak to that.
And I would suggest probably at your there would be things like your review of your strategic priorities, or if something was much more imminent, needed to be looked at a lot sooner, then possibly you would maybe have to look at your strategic priorities at one of the quarterly updates and see what needs to fall off and have that kind of discussion at that point.
To balance the work plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think probably it's more to just give you thoughts on different things, like things like the tourism strategy that you're finding out about and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yeah, I quite like the idea. More input is good input.
Yeah, more engagement, more, yeah. So there's a recommendation there, if there's no more questions.
I'll move that council approve the Village Roundtable terms of reference.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh, can I vote for that? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay, and council member monthly reports. I'll let Councillor Terrian go first because he's there in the list.
Sure. The main one I want to speak to here is from the meeting of the Waste Management Board on January 11th. We got our first look at the proposed budget. The recommendation was to hold the requisition, the taxation, at $5 million, and that's split between both CVRD and Strathcona Regional District. And a $10 increase to the per ton to tipping fees at the actual waste center. It came up, though, that if we kept on as we were, they were projecting a $10 million shortfall in 2031 when new Cell 3 is going to need to come online. So they came back, and I might as well talk about our February 8th meeting while I'm at it. So there was another look at the budget just last week on February 8th, where we talked some more about that shortfall. They had more accurate numbers for this year's surplus, which came in at $3 million. So we're committing a little over $2 million to reserves this year, which is in line with what we'll need if per year if we're going to make up sort of that $10 million. So it was decided to leave the budget as it was, no tax increases this year, other than the tipping fee, and we'll come back and there will be a new strategic waste management strategic plan should be ready before the next budget process, and we will have a better look at the numbers and make a plan for how we're going to move forward at that point. So probably some form of tax increase, tipping fee increase, and or borrowing in 2031.
Oh, 2031 is when the next Cell 3 goes.
Yeah, so it's a long ways down the road, but we can see the shortfall looming, and we're taking steps to address it, get out ahead of it, and make sure we're ready and have a plan for when it happens.
I always thought that was strange because we reduced it from 6 million, which only cost every resident like $16, and then consistently voted to not bring that back up.
Yeah,
and now
yeah.
you're
Well,
still talking about this.
now the results of that are that there will be a giant shortfall.
Yeah.
They showed us that a couple years ago too. It's like, oh, we're going to be short in 31. It's like, well, why don't we vote to keep that?
Yeah.
It's very strange. Yeah. Politics.
Politics.
So weird.
Anyway, that's where it's at, and yeah. You were at the CVRD committee, the committee of the whole, so I'll let you speak to that one. Yeah, that's basically my highlights this week.
Thank you. Do you guys want to go next?
I got a really
Councillor
short
Bracken?
one because most of my meetings were deferred until February, so I've got a couple coming up here. These community justice centers next week, Thursday, and this Thursday is the Heritage Committee. So last time we met was on January the, oh good grief, it's on January 18th, I think. And there was just discussion around expanding the Heritage Conservation Area. We discussed how, and they were talking about expanding it to include such things as the colliery railways, and that we're not firmed up on that. There's thoughts that we should just contain it to the village boundary, and that's it. Otherwise, it starts to get a little bit convoluted. But definitely, there's a lot of interest around the old rail beds and that. So. We had a discussion on how the new provincial legislation on increasing housing might affect some of the heritage buildings and some of the older homes in the area, and how we would deal with that. And then there was we're going through the community heritage register and basically classifying things and getting rid of some of the getting rid of some of the more esoteric aspects, which were more ideas than actual something that the village might be
Action
interested
items.
in. Yeah, actionable items. Thank you. And there's discussion around having perhaps lumping some of the areas, like the Bevan Road or the Bevan housing. I think there was an area up in Allen, Little Jerusalem, just having neighborhoods, and maybe having that as a bit more of an interest and focal point for that to encompass a style of housing. So, yeah, that's about it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sullivan?
Had a pretty uneventful month other than regular council duties. I did spend an afternoon at the disc golf course installing some infrastructure. That was fun.
That place is busy.
It's busy and beautiful. And
Yeah.
the volunteerism. Keep it up, everybody.
Yeah.
It's looking great down there.
It does. Okay, mine's really long, so I'm gonna just, yeah, so we did have a committee of the whole on the CBRD's climate action plan, which was good. We talked a lot about where to make the biggest impact, and of course that's housing and transportation, and so active travel and lots of other great ideas, car shares and other such things. So that was good to put all our collective elected heads together, including staff. What else have I got? So followed up with the geologists, so the ACIT, the geothermal stuff that we're working with ACIT on. I followed up with the geologists to get all the MineWorks maps collected into a folder, a virtual folder, so that they can be shared with ACIT. And then Michelle and I met with them after that to just figure out where that's going next, and they're suggesting that possibly a grad student or a senior co-op student might come up and do a technical assessment. So there will be more news on that shortly, hopefully. What else? A lot of CVRD things. Which are all there for you to read, and the other, and the link to the meeting page is also there if anybody wants to. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to highlight is the Island Health. So Island Health held an update for Island chiefs, mayors, chairs, MLAs, and MPs. And there was a lot of good information there, but one of the things that has not really been a topic of conversation was the coroner's report, which is a tragedy in and of itself. More than 7 people a day dying in BC. But Charmaine Enns did point out at that meeting that the Comox Valley's numbers are lower than the last 2 previous years. So we are doing something that is working here, and I just wanted to do a shout out to all the people and organizations in the valley that are working with people to lessen those deaths, whether it's the community action team or AVI or all the other service organizations that are trying to keep people safe. It is noticed and appreciated. And then the final thing is we had former community member John Leung passed in February, and his family kindly brought him home to rest here. So We attended both the service in Courtney, which was lovely, and so many pictures of Cumberland people and Cumberland and all the things that John did, from the cemetery to the grocery store, and hopefully people in the community read all the posts on the Facebook post that Kevin Staden shared, because there were tons of people just like, he saved my family and he did this and he did that, and it was just a really lovely ceremony. And then the procession into Cumberland. Hadn't been in a funeral procession for a long time. People don't really know how to do it anymore. We should do that more often. It's a really nice way to honor the person. And we came into Cumberland and drove past the old store site and then out to the Chinese cemetery, where there was another ceremony, and then the reception at the cultural center. So just wishing his family well, and appreciating all that they did for this community, and encouraging everyone who lives in Cumberland to look up the Leung family and go to the exhibition at the museum, which I don't know the date off the top of my head, but they're sort of focusing the seat at the table event to focus on Leung's grocery and the Leung family. So that'll be a super interesting event at the museum, and always appreciating the museum for doing so much for our history and culture. And that's that for me. That was everybody, right? So, notices, motions, and announcements.
Can I move that council receive the member
sorry.
monthly
Thank
reports
you.
for January 2024?
And seconder, thank you. That was Councillor Sullivan, and all in favor, thank you. Heritage Committee is the 4 p.m. on February 15th, which is imminent. And Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee, February 21st at 9:30 a.m. Anybody have any questions? Sir, do you have any questions? Any questions online? Nothing. Really? Okay.
There'll be some on Facebook.
There'll be
later.
some. I'm just like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, so we'll move to close then.
I'll move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 90 of the Community Charter to consider labor relations or other employee relations.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.